Are you looking for a fun way to win up to 25 times your money this football and basketball season? Test your skills on Prize Picks, the most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Just select two or more players, pick more or less on their projections for a wide variety of stats, and place your entry. It's as easy as that. If you have the skills, you can turn $10 into $250 with just a few taps. Easy gameplay, quick withdrawals, and injury insurance on your picks are what makes Prize Picks the #1 daily fantasy sports app. Ready to test your skills? Join the PrizePicks community of more than 7 million players who have already signed up. Right now, PrizePicks will match your first deposit up to $100. Just visit prizepicks.com/bluewire and use code BLUEWIRE. That's code BLUEWIRE at prizepicks.com/bluewire for a first deposit match of up to $100. PrizePicks, daily fantasy sports made easy.
Today's episode is brought to you by Cars.com. With over 2 million vehicles and 50,000 more added every day, Cars.com will match you with the perfect car for you, your budget, your life, your style. And if you're ready to say goodbye to your current car, Cars.com will get you an instant offer to cash it in. Just start by entering your license plate and get matched with a local dealer who will write you the check. So whether you're looking to buy or sell, just go to Cars.com. It's magical.
Hello, friends. Welcome to Mavs Moneyball After Dark. You're joined by Kirk Henderson and Josh Bowe, together for the first time on one of these shows in a while. We were trying to figure out when we last did something like this in the pregame, and it's got to have been at least 2 weeks. But I know, like, we talk every day, so this gets a little confusing. So, how are you, Josh?
Oh, I'm doing pretty good. Just in the bowels of summer now, and I feel like we just kind of got now that summer league's over, it feels like we kind of got clearance till August, whenever Lucas starts up.
Yeah.
International ball again. So we're kind of in the dead zone right now.
Well, and the dead zone is really right, because we're waiting for whatever like, we're recording this on Thursday the 21st at about 8:15, and it earlier today, like, there's just been kind of an impending feeling that the Donovan Mitchell, whatever's happening with him, is happening sooner rather than later, and then of course just like nothing. That's the way these things go. So while we're all kind of sitting here wondering what's going to happen, like, it feels like there's a lot of like impending questions about, could the Mavericks take part in one of, like, whether as a peripheral partner, as a means to like facilitate salary. Like, the Mavericks don't have much to work with. So it's like, if they're going to be involved, it's because they want to be involved, and they like the numbers can match right. But so as we just kind of sit here and wait for everything to happen, there's not a lot for us to talk about in the macro, or like in the specific sense, except to sort of like work ourselves up about things that has actually happened. Like, I got into a epic argument with our buddy Dalton today in DMs about Josh Green. And after about 10 minutes, I'm like, this isn't about Josh Green. I'm mad, or rather irritated, because we got to the Western Conference Finals, and now Josh Green has to matter going into next season. And I think we've sat on this long enough. It's been 3 weeks to the day since free agency started. Through 3 weeks, this has been a very disappointing offseason.
Yeah, I mean, even if you're an optimist or someone who looked glass half full, I mean, I don't know how else you could really look at it. You lost Jalen Brunson. Basically, it's been 3 players: Brunson out, McGee and Wood in. And I think if you would look at that in the aggregate, I would think you would think that's probably a little bit of a step back, considering where the Mavericks ended the season against the Warriors. I think the big thing was they just need more guys that can play in the playoffs, more guys that can give them minutes, because they were basically playing like a 6-man rotation. Dwight Powell was a starter only in name, and he was playing like 7 to 8 minutes a game. Josh Green kind of floated in and out of the lineup. He had some moments in the playoffs, but he wasn't able to stick. Frank Ntilikina had some moments, wasn't able to stick. They needed one more guy to consistently give them minutes.
Consistent minutes, like reliable stuff.
Right, yeah, like a everyday rotation playoff guy. And you could presumably argue that this offseason so far is they've lost one and gained none in terms of player transactions. Now, Christian Wood is hopefully going to be one. But JaVale McGee, you don't anticipate him being like a 20-minute playoff guy. And then I guess, the hope is Tim Hardaway Jr. is some sort of addition. And, regardless of how you feel on him, I mean, he's going to get minutes and he's going to help more than like, the Green and Frank and Trey Burke minutes. Even at his worst, like he'll still be more productive.
It's going to be a different something. But the production, like you can feel a little more like there's going to be something there, and it's something because the first over/under lines came out 47.5 is the Mavericks line, and for me as a non-gambler, it's just an utter stay away. Now the Mavericks won 52 games last year. That's 4.5 games fewer than they won. That's basically the betting line. I got a guy I chat with, and most of you guys know this, but I respond to most direct messages on Twitter, so long as you're not like a consistent asshole. Like even if you're regularly an asshole, I like talking to people. It doesn't matter. He was giving me some grief where he's like, "You can't say that the Maverick, like you're this down on the team already." And I'm like, I'm up on I'm up on Luka. Okay, you tell me Luka's playing 70 plus games and is a real MVP candidate, then I am here for anything. But where I get frustrated with the offseason is it feels very much like the post-championship Dirk years where it came back to, well, we have Dirk. Well, we have Luka. And having Luka is an awesome bet. Like it's a great fallback card. It's just a little bit tough to swallow because everything else the Mavericks have done becomes more like everything becomes more important, and you lose Brunson for nothing. And in a way where like he's giving another and Brunson's giving another interview which is coming out for JJ Redick's podcast tomorrow. And the first time he talked, if you listen between the lines, he makes it sound like he would have signed had they offered before the trade deadline. And he wasn't interested after the trade deadline, which he still could have signed because Dorian Finney-Smith did. And there's just enough going on where it's like, it's just kind of one body shot after another that I'm not like despondent. That's not what I mean. And if I like people kind of misunderstand that online where it's like, I'm really not like they performed excellently last year. Like they're going to win. Like the floor on a Luka Doncic team is probably 45 games. Like they're going to be real good. It's just, are they going to be top 4 seed good? And people argue with me on this where I'm like, if they lose 2 more games, they're like 6th. Like, what do we do? It's very difficult.
It's a difficult balance when you're trying to talk about it because, like you said, people probably think they're going to be like a lottery team, and that's not what that's not what you're saying. Because, I mean, we all know Luka running the show with shooting, and say what you will about losing Brunson. I mean, they still have Bullock, Finney-Smith, Maxey. Now they've got Wood, THJ coming back. They're still shooting on the roster. They could use some more for sure, but I mean, there's still enough. They're still apparently, for what we know right now, going to play the one big, 2 wings, Luka and another ball handler lineup that really powered them in the second half of last season. If you believe that Christian Wood's coming off the bench and JaVale McGee starting, and I know there was kind of a kerfuffle about that, and I understand that, but there was like a weird relief to me because I almost think I would rather them do that than try to smash the square peg in a round hole with starting Wood and McGee at the same time. Because at least like if they're starting McGee and bringing Wood off the bench, they understand why they won games last year, right? Because they're still going to start Luka, Dinwiddie, the 2 forwards, and a rim runner, which is the formula that carried. Like, I mean, they were one of the best teams in the NBA and got all the way to the Western Conference Finals behind that formula. So, like that formula, like they can only be so bad. Like it's just Luka is just that good, and that formula works. So the concern is just injuries, and the 2 ball handlers. The only 2 ball handlers on the roster right now are both guys that haven't really played a full season in a while. Like Luka has kind of low key become a little bit injury prone like the last 2 years. I mean, he's missed
when he
time.
has an injury because of his play style,
Yeah.
It's kind of like a catastrophic injury because he plays like a downhill running back, and he's so tough that when he comes down on somebody's ankle or something like that, he's a 240-pound guy. When you sprain your ankle coming down on one foot, like it's gonna be bad. Like it's not like he ever like lightly rolls his ankle. When he rolls his ankle, it's like, oh no, did he break his ankle?
Yeah, I mean we're 2 seasons where he's missed like 10 games ish the last two seasons because of a ankle injury. So
ankle injuries, physical play, call it what you will. There's just going to be a nature of wondering, do they need to protect Luka from himself? Because he wants to play every game.
Oh, yeah.
Look at how much ball he's playing overseas. Like, once again, he's not getting a summer break, which is, depending on your point of view, either good or bad. But this roster is, at the moment, exceptionally Luka dependent in a way that last year's ended up not being. I mean, Luka's obviously the engine, but you don't win 2 of 3 playoff games. Brunson was that important to the team.
Yeah, I mean, think about how poorly they were 16 and 18 at one point last season. Luka was hurt at portions of the early part of the season, but he was also, he wasn't up to his standards. He came in the season out of shape. A lot of other guys were, Finney Smith and Bullock slumped crazy. Like, they were crazy slumping at the beginning of the season. Like, no one really played well except for Brunson. Like, if you think about, like, where would the team be last season if they didn't have Brunson? Because they were 16 and 18 in December, and Brunson was playing really well. Like, imagine if Brunson also was slumping, or, he didn't take the leap that he took last season. Like, they could have been in a much bigger hole than they had to climb out of. And I think, Brunson was like the most consistent player on the team from opening day to, January 1st, I feel like. And then Luka got healthy and they got rolling. They traded KP and the pieces started to fit a little bit better. So, you don't have that luxury. If Luka starts the season again slow, they don't have that Brunson backup plan. It's all going to be on Dinwiddie. And if one of those guys misses games, that's kind of it. There's literally no point. There's literally no one coming off the bench that can presumably run a lineup. Like, Frank Ntilikina is a point guard only in name. He's a 3-and-D guard, and we joke about Josh Green, but he's not going to be a point guard.
See, I demand, like, I'm to the point. This was part of my argument at Dalton, where I'm like, if we are gonna invest ourselves in Josh Green, let's get weird, because Josh Green is not Dorian Finney-Smith, and that's so far the role they've shoved him into. Dorian Finney-Smith is a special, specific basketball player that can do things really well because he took 500 3-point attempts by the end of his first 3 years. Our man Josh Green has taken just over 100 in 2 seasons. It's not his game. I want to see him do the things he's good at. Josh Green is an interesting ball mover. Like, I really don't hate, like, I know it's a crazy thing. They're never going to do it, but, like, let's get a little funky with some of these lineups. Anyways, that's a bit of a side tangent. It's just, like, there's some real, I still don't know what to make of last season's team other than to be happy about it, because they started the year 17 and 18 and finished, I think, like 35 and 12. Like that's insane. They've won 75% of their games.
Yeah. And I mean, I think the thing to learn is, KP thing did not work, because I mean, the season started to turn around. Like, I know the trade definitely spurred it on, but the turnaround really started when, like, KP missed 5 to 10 games before he got traded. When he went out and they went to the Powell, Luka Brunson, Bullock, Dorian lineup, like, that's when things change. Like, that's the blueprint. And basically what you want to do is just keep getting better players to fit that mold. I think they're pretty good with the 3-and-D wing, with Finney Smith and Bullock, and now they got to probably upgrade the secondary ball handler spot, either off the bench or with Dinwiddie. The thing that's interesting is, I know that there's a lot of consternation about the offseason, and I know how it's like Charlie Brown getting the football pulled away from him in terms of how many times have we heard, well, the offseason's not done yet. Like, they got to have something up their sleeve. I feel like we've heard that the last 3 off seasons and nothing's really happened. But the fact that they seemingly promised Goran Dragic like a really limited role, despite the fact that like if he was on the roster right now, he would be the backup point guard. Like,
God, I guess we've
they,
not talked.
we haven't talked since then. So they have to have someone, like, if that's the role they were offering him, either they're delusional about the roster or they've got another name penciled in for that backup guard spot.
Well,
it's the only way that makes sense. And again, that kind of falls on, can they pick off the scraps of the Jazz whenever they trade Mitchell, because they'll be in full rebuild mode. And my prediction is they probably end up with Jordan Clarkson, who I think would kind of slide into that backup 6-man guard role really well for what they need. Because like, what if Utah trades Mitchell? Like, what do they need a guy like why do they need a 32-year-old 6-man of the year player? Like they just don't. So I would imagine once that trade gets done, there's going to be some interesting veteran pieces, I think, on Utah that the Mavericks could use. And I wonder if they can maybe get in on that. Although they, like you said earlier, they don't really have that much to trade right now in terms of draft capital.
So this, understanding, guys, like this podcast had no structure. I asked Josh to talk and we are talking. So this is going to go places and places we didn't really gamble on. So I want to touch on something and I want to see if you agree or where your position is. So when you read about what Goran Dragic said after the fact in terms of what the Mavericks offered him, and he did this last year when he talked to a local paper and said some things in a more candid way way more candid way than he would have said to the American media, and essentially said they offered him the cheerleading role. I'm paraphrasing to a degree, but they said they weren't going to play more than 1 in 5 games. And you read between the lines, and there's some clear what the hell going on. Now, that on its own, okay, I kind of roll my eyes at it. Then you hear Jalen Brunson's introductory press conference with the Knicks, and there's some sense of the fact that Jalen Brunson felt disrespected. Now, I don't know, like on those two incidents on their own, I think I would tend to hand wave, because athletes, particularly professional athletes who are so good at their craft that they need something to get mad at. The Michael Jordan, and it became personal for me type thing. Like, athletes are like this, they're crazy people. And I mean that in the best way possible. But when I hear these two things together, I find myself a little bit, my hackles have raised is where I will go with it, and say, what is going on here to where Luka's mentor, who shares an agent with Luka, left that conversation feeling I'm going to be kind here, like disappointed in what the offer was. Am I making a mountain out of a molehill here? Now, and I'm just sort of, keep in mind, guys, like I'm thinking out loud. I've not bothered to put these words to paper because I don't think it's a good idea for a post or anything like that. I find myself a little bit concerned, I guess. That's the best way to put it.
Yeah, it just depends. And do they enter training camp with this exact roster? Then you're going to be like, well, wait, like how could you not find time for Dragic? Like that literally just doesn't make sense. Like there's no rational explanation for that if they just enter the off season with the exact same group of guys they have right now, evening of July 21st. So the only thing that makes sense to me is, like I said, if they have a guy earmarked for that role, and it depends on the Kyrie trade or KD trade, or what I think is more likely is the Mitchell trade, because you look at Utah and they've got Donovan Mitchell, they've got Jordan Clarkson, Mike Conley, and Bojan Bogdanovic, and it's like they won't need any of those guys if they trade Mitchell. Like that's if you trade Gobert and Mitchell in one offseason, like they are starting the rebuild, and you don't need 30-plus-year-old veterans that make some money, as part of your rebuild. So if in 3 weeks the Mavericks are getting some draft compensation and taking on the awful contract of Mike Conley to be their backup guard, it makes a little bit more sense why they would tell
Sure.
Goran Dragic that, hey, you're not going to, we don't have the minutes that these are the minutes we have for you. It's not that much. It's a smaller role. Like that'll all make sense. But I think what's frustrating is there's just nothing. You're just kind of sitting here waiting. Like I'm saying, I think that maybe Jordan Clarkson's going to end up on this team, but that's just me pulling it out of my butt. Like there's no reporting, like no one's saying anything about it. So there's that. And then I think there's also part of it, I wonder, is with Nico and Jason Kidd. I mean, it was the biggest shakeup to the Mavericks front office, non-playing roster in, 10, 12 years. And then, Donnie goes even farther back than Rick. Like Donnie's been part of the org for, 20 plus. So I wonder if part of it with Brunson leaving and, not particularly showing big interest in Goran Dragic, it just it's just different guy. Like they're just different guys in charge now. And there's a different coach that wants a different set of players than the previous coach did, or maybe the previous GM did. And, Nico Harrison didn't draft any of the players on the roster. The only guys he's responsible for bringing in, are, that are on the roster right now are Bullock and McGee and Wood. Like he inherited Luka and Jalen Brunson and Finney Smith and Dwight Powell and Maxi Kleba, and maybe I'm just speculating. Maybe Brunson wasn't, he didn't draft Jalen Brunson, so maybe there just wasn't that emotional attachment to him to want to spend whatever money it took to keep him. Like maybe in his mind he's like, okay, we can earmark that money in 2 years for someone. Like we can find someone else. Like maybe that's just his mindset because he didn't draft that guy. And like I think we've seen in the league, like GMs are, when new GMs and new coaches come in, I mean, they usually shake things up and they try to build the team and the org and the roster around how they see fit. So, and I think me and you both agree that Luka is the only guy on this roster that is untouchable, right? Like, I mean, I think we both loved Brunson, and I still think it's a mistake to let him walk. And I think I would have rather had him here on this team for whatever money it would have took to keep him. But at the end of the day, I understand that he hasn't made an all-star game. Like he's like, at the end of the day, I know that he's not an irreplaceable player in the long run. So, I mean, I wonder if it's just part of that. Like they're just, it's a new GM, and we haven't had a new GM in Dallas in a long time. And I know Cuban's still part of it, and I know Cuban makes a lot of decisions, but like I don't think Mark Cuban signing is recruiting and signing Reggie Bullock. Those types of moves, I've never believed him to be like the guy that's driving that. He's probably the guy that's saying, okay, I approve on the money and all that stuff, but like I don't think he's going to Bullock's house and getting him to sign or on the initially. Like that's usually GM. Like Donnie was the guy that was signing the Brandon Wrights of the world and the host, trading for getting Jose Calderon and all that kind of and I always picture Cuban as being like he's approving of the money and approving of the big picture stuff. I know some people disagree because they think he definitely has his hands on a lot of aspects of the basketball decision making. But I don't know. I'm rambling now, but I just kind of feel like maybe that goes into it. It's just we haven't had a new GM in a long time, and new GMs think differently than the old ones, right?
Yeah.
I don't know.
No, I'm sure you're I think that's probably the right take, because just because they fell upon a style that worked, like I'm still that the basketball worked. Like Spencer Dinwiddie shot 49% from the floor and 41% from three. He is a career 41% from the floor guy, 32% from three guy. Like he has these stretches where he is just hot sauce. And the Mavericks caught an elongated one when then he fell off the map in the playoffs, only to find himself after another 2 more weeks. And I still wonder what their intent, their intent was to split up the money and to get into more digestible contracts. They've talked about this, but I'm curious as to because if they earnestly felt that getting another ball handler was that important, then this offseason wouldn't have been this funky. because they went from having like 3.5 ball handlers to 2, and that's a little difficult. Like the bigger picture that exists, like I got to keep coming back to this, is I'm still very confident. I'm also, and I think we both had to be honest about this, there's some hedging involved here because it's been such a peculiar offseason with some of these bigger stars that if the Mavericks come through with something different, that changes our assessment. When I say through 3 weeks, I'm a little disappointed. I don't think that's unfair.
No, I don't think so either.
Okay. Because I've tried, we have taken some peculiar criticism ourselves the last several weeks, and it's got me sort of like questioning elements of how you and I talk about this team. But I think that has much more to do with the fact that we just haven't had Dallas basketball in a month and a half, like almost 2 months now. So it's like I'm probably just overthinking elements of this because, I mean, you and I were pretty tough on the team to start the year, and the team also wasn't very good to start the year. And then they started playing really well, and we had a great time. And so it's like I always try to like there's criticism, and then there are people who just don't care for what we have to say. And when there's like a little bit of like I always try to like really listen whenever any one of my friends, my wife does this too, because she's a lawyer. She tells me how she feels. She is critical. And so it's like I always try to like think about that, because obviously you and I, we don't affect anything, but we do have a platform where people want to listen to us and engage with us, and they read our work. And so it's always, I don't know, maybe this offseason will end up being fine. I sort of have personally settled on the fact that this may just be the offseason where the Mavericks take their medicine, because I was re-listening to our 2019 podcast to kick off free agency, and you and I had a lot of worries that at the time, like it's so funny listening to it, because you were so pissed about them not getting Patrick Beverley.
I really wanted him that summer.
And it's like the fact that he might be on the table right now as somebody they could get is just the most Maverick shit ever.
Right. He's another guy that's like, he's on the Jazz. The Jazz do not need Patrick Beverley. Come on down.
Oh, it's great. And it's so funny because some of what, like the specifics of what we were mad at were off key, but the bigger picture of this is concerning for a team building future, we're pretty fair. As a result of, falling in the lottery in 2018 and moving 2 draft picks to get Kristaps Porzingis, even as we talked about this, I knew it was difficult to make moves, but I still don't think I understood just how badly it hamstrung them. And then you add on top of the fact that the picks market right now is simply out of control. What the Minnesota Timberwolves did to go get Rudy Gobert is beyond insane. They might be a 4 seed next year, but I also think they're going to get swept in the first round of the playoffs. Like not swept, but beaten. And then Donovan Mitchell, who again the Mavericks just abused and embarrassed, might fetch a haul of picks. That makes me feel like a lunatic. Like I've been joking with people. I'm like, well, what if Luka demands a trade in 2025? Do we trade him for 37 first rounders? Like what's going on here? Like there's no. And so it's like the Mavericks are just sort of boxed in, but they're boxed in not only because of things that they did, but because the market is insane. And so it's just, I think maybe this is a year where if they sort of slog through it, and I don't know if you really slog with Luka Doncic and you slog to 50 wins, but if it might be kind of a less entertaining year, but you reset your books and then you're ready to maybe be a player at the trade deadline. Like, I don't know. I'm looking for some like optimism for a team that has a pretty high floor.
Yeah. And I think, and there's a couple things. Like one, like you get Christian Wood and JaVale McGee and you lose Brunson. Like I don't understand why anyone would really be that contentious if you've been like, man, I'm not feeling the Mavs off season so far. Like, I mean, that's just, I don't think that's being too critical. I also I don't think that's nearing into like doomerism or anything like that. Like, cause there's definitely a point where if you're being so outrageously negative or angry about something, it kind of drowns out your point. But I don't think we're there yet because, like, I mean, you watched how the team won in the playoffs, and their first opening move in free agency was 3 years, 20, given a 3-year contract to 34-year-old JaVale McGee, and you're kind of like, wait, what? And like you lose Jalen Brunson, and it's like, wait, what? And like, it it might make more sense in like 4 weeks, but it's fair for people to question it right now until something happens. And like I just don't think that's outlandish. And then the other part of it is going forward is I wonder if it's going to be a quiet off season if they end up not doing anything else. I mean, they still. You talk about the KP trade; they still owe a pick. Like they haven't gotten off the KP trade yet.
That's
like,
why, yeah.
It's and you think about it, and you think, okay, the KP trade was the biggest move they made in the first in Luke for the entirety of Luka's rookie contract. Like that was their biggest swing at trying to get a second All-Star. Now Luka starts his second contract, and he's got 4 years plus an option. Presumably, when they give up the final KP pick after this season and it goes to the Knicks in 2023 draft, they'll be restocked. They can start trading draft picks, more freely, and they can trade the 2025 pick and the 2027 pick and 2029 pick and whatever. They can start. They'll be closer. Right now, because of the protections on the 2023 pick, I don't think they can even trade 2025 yet, right? Because like there's technically a chance they keep their 2023 pick.
It's very confusing.
Right. Like the rules, the rules are terrible. But they, once they get off the KP trade, they're a little bit more. They can start trading picks a little bit easier. But you think about it, like, okay, KP trade was the big swing for Luka's rookie deal. I mean, realistically, they probably have one more swing on Luka's next contract. Like if you think about, they took one swing and it cost them they had to wait Luka's rookie year out before it even finished, giving up the second pick in the KP deal. Presumably, whenever they they're gonna make another big move. Like they're not just gonna keep holding water. Presumably, sign. I love Reggie Bullock, but I can't imagine they're just gonna keep signing 3 for $30 million contracts for the rest of Luke. Like they're gonna make another swing on that guy, whether it's free agency or trade. But if it's trade, like they have to make their next big move count. Like they cannot have another KP trade, because if they have another KP trade, Luka's second contract is over, and he can actually start to put pressure on you instead of the make believe pressure that everyone kind of talked about when his rookie year. They're like, oh, that's down the road. That's a while. That's like 5 years away. That's 6 years away. Well, now it's like 2 or 3 years away. And if you make another big trade, you have to hit on it. So I wonder if there's going to be some caution with the front office and decision making in terms of when they're going to make that next big move, because if they make another big move, presumably they're going to trade the 2025 and the 2027 first rounder. Like they could do that for another guy that they think is going to be an all-star to play next to Luka and to win a title. Okay, you do that, you don't have another pick to trade for. You don't have more picks to trade for a couple more years, and all of a sudden it's Luka option time, and like they got to be like the runway is gone. Like the margin for error is slowly crept away. Like every move they make now is further under the microscope, and they got to work. Like the wiggle room, I just don't think is there anymore. And I know that sounds negative, but I also think they're gonna get cap room back in a couple of years. They're gonna get their they're gonna have the ability to make a big move. Like they're not hamstrung for like the next 5 years. The thing is they have to nail it now. They just don't. They're not going to have the ground to make up if they do another KP type trade where it doesn't work. And to be honest, think about how fortunate they are that they turned that KP situation into somewhat of a net win with Dinwiddie. Like imagine if Dinwiddie wasn't good, and which is what I think everyone kind of expected with how he looked in Washington. So. They're actually in probably a better spot than they should be, considering how bad the KP trade kind of blew up for them. So I think they'll be okay. Well, it's money time. They got the next big move has to work.
Well, that's why I keep thinking of it kind of as a take your medicine year, at least for where we are right now, because everyone that I chat with I've gotten people to understand with the picks market stuff, until the market settles a little bit, you have to hold on to your picks like they're one of your most important resources, which means the Mavericks can't offload any bad salary by sending away a pick, because that's what happened to LeBron James's first Cavs team. Is they signed a bunch of bad deals, then kept having to offload people by sending out, but when they were just sort of swapping stuff around, and the Mavericks are in a better situation than the Cavaliers ever were, and LeBron at that point in time was a better player than Luka. Maybe not. I know that's going to make people mad, but it's like LeBron James we're talking about. Like he's not. This isn't heresy. But I feel better about where the Mavericks are relative to those Cavs teams. And so I think that if you just go with the team that the Mavericks have, you find a third ball handler in some way, shape, or form. The joke was, somebody sent me a joke where it's like, man, bet we'd love to have Trey Burke right now. It's like, oh God, it's dark.
But this is also why. Oh, go ahead.
Well, then you sort of see where we are. And if the Mavericks, get the Luka Doncic who started the 2019-2020 season, nearly all of our concerns go away, because for me and for you, and we've stated this before, and it's worth stating again, in an 82-game season, right now I'm counting on 65 games from Luka, not 75. And those 10 games make all the difference.
Yeah, exactly. And I think, another thing to kind of, sorry to keep rambling about my point from before, but this is why, like, you talk about taking their medicine and kind of resetting. You reset the cap in 2024. You reset your picks when you get rid of that KP pick. But it's like, this is why, like, they might not trade. Like, if Utah wants a first for Bojan Bogdanovic, if you're the Mavericks and you still owe a first to New York,
can't do it.
Yeah, you can't. Like,
cannot do it.
Right. Or if I keep saying that they want. I keep thinking Jordan Clarkson ends up on the team. If they hold firm on a first round pick, like you can't. Like they're gonna have to, like you said, take their medicine. Like they're at the point now where they can't trade any more first round picks, I think, until this KP trade kind of finalizes. Unless it's like a no-brainer, unless they're getting a certified all-star back. But in terms of like getting another really high quality role player, they just have to wait, because they can't keep punting these picks unless they're getting like a guy that they're going to build with Luka around for the next couple of years, and they think it's going to be an all-star. Like they just have to wait. And that sucks, because if that means they miss out on a Bogdanovic, or they miss out on a Jordan Clarkson, that's going to make this year harder than it probably needs to be. But I think at the end of the day, I'd rather them do that than just keep throwing picks down the drain for a marginal improvement, when, hey, you got Luka, you could probably get by this season without having to trade a first rounder for a rotation guy. Let's just kind of maybe see where you're at after this season and go from there. But like it might not be as fun, but I mean, with Luka, who knows?
I mean, that's the other thing. Like the first 35 games were not fun.
No, they weren't.
The last 50 games were really fun. And so like it evens out to where we're like, oh, that was a really nice season. And it wasn't. It was a journey. Is what it was. And that's okay. Anyway, we're almost towards the end here. You and I, we got a long kind of, off season ahead of us. Like I think we'll probably try to focus a little the next time we talk to see if there's anything more specific that's out there. We have some interesting pieces up on the site. You wrote about the just like the picks market being like why it's so difficult for the Mavericks to do anything. I have an odds piece that I've been tasked with writing by SB Nation that I need to get up at some point. Our guy David Trink, he's a grad student out at Texas A&M who doesn't write for us too much. He participated in Dorian Finney-Smith's workout yesterday, which was the thing that I just missed entirely. Like, I don't know how this happened, that like none of us noticed this, and he's going to write about what it was like being put through a Dorian Finney-Smith workout. JJ Barea retired. Like, there's been some like Luka Doncic and Goran Dragic apparently hooked Shaq up with like a house on the beach when he went to like somewhere in Slovenia. Like I just saw this right before we got on. Like there's always like weird Mav stuff happening. I'm probably going to host a Spotify Live maybe tomorrow. I don't know. I tried to play basketball yesterday and I actually didn't do bad, but like I woke up today feeling like I was in a car accident. So Josh and I didn't even know if we were going to do this, but gutting it out. So, all right. Do you got any parting thoughts before we go?
I would just say, since this is our first podcast in a while, I know that there was a couple of weeks ago, we kind of hinted at it when we were talking about like the reaction this off season. There was, I try not to do this, but I did it, and I got on, a little Twitter kerfuffle, and I just don't want to bring it up or get into it. But other than just saying, I really appreciate the support that came out of that. And it really meant a lot to me to see the reactions from my peers, from our fans, from just anybody that's interacted with me or interacted with my work, whether writing or on the podcast. So I just wanted to thank anyone who reached out, whether it was a DM or reply or what have you, and just wanted to let you know how much it meant to me, and it really helped. I really appreciated it.
Well, guys, Kirk and Josh, we'll be back at some point. It's August, and no, it's not. It's July. It feels like August. Man, this heat is just
we got a couple more months.
That's right. I looked at the weather.com, and it's 100 for the next 10 days, and I'm like, we've had 100 for at least, it's like 20 days in a row. Like this is all my fault. I moved to Texas, and it gets even hotter. So, All right, guys, we'll talk to you in a few days. Everybody be good and stay hydrated.